The fluorescent lights above the diner buzzed like dying wasps, their sickly yellow glow casting shadows that seemed to crawl across the cracked linoleum floor. I could feel the weight of exhaustion settling into my bones as I balanced 3 plates along my left arm, the heat from the mashed potatoes seeping through the cheap fabric of my uniform. The smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon had long since stopped bothering me. After 6 months working double shifts at Rosie's diner, I'd become numb to most things. My feet ached in shoes held together by duct tape and prayers. The sole of my right sneaker had separated again this morning, and I could feel the cold floor through the gap with each step. I couldn't afford new ones, not with Emma's medication costs climbing every month. My daughter's leukemia treatments had drained every penny I'd managed to save, and the hospital bills kept coming like waves trying to drown me. "Coffee, table 7, Rosie barked from behind the counter, her gravelly voice cutting through the dinner rush chaos. I nodded, setting down the plates at table 4. A family that didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my existence beyond a grunt. Invisible. That's what I'd become in this city. Just another struggling single mother trying to survive, one shift at a time. The bell above the door chimed, and the diner's ambient noise seemed to shift, like the air pressure had changed. I glanced up from wiping down table 6, and my breath caught somewhere between my lungs and throat. 3 men entered, but only one commanded every molecule of oxygen in the room. He was tall, well over 6 feet, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. The fabric moved with him like liquid shadow, tailored so perfectly it seemed painted onto his broad shoulders. Dark hair swept back from a face carved from marble and sin, strong jaw shadowed with precise stubble. But it was his eyes that made my hands tremble against the dirty rag I was holding. Cold, calculating, the color of slate before a storm. The 2 men flanking him were clearly security, earpieces, bulges under their jackets that spoke of weapons, eyes constantly scanning the diner like predators assessing threats. They moved with military precision, one checking the exits, the other positioning himself with a clear view of the entrance. The man in the suit, the one who mattered, walked with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're the most dangerous thing in any room. People parted for him instinctively, conversations dying mid-sentence as he passed. They took the corner booth, the one that faced the door with walls on 2 sides. Strategic. The security detail didn't sit. One stood near the entrance. The other positioned himself where he could watch both the kitchen and the front windows. "Riley," Rosie hissed, snapping her fingers at me. "Table 12. Move." My legs felt disconnected from my body as I approached their booth, notepad clutched in my trembling hand. Up close, he was even more devastating. I could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark, like sandalwood and danger. A thin scar traced along his left cheekbone, a white line that only made him more terrifying and its implications of violence survived. "What can I get you?" My voice came out smaller than I intended, barely above a whisper. He didn't look at me immediately. Instead, he studied the menu with the kind of intense focus most people reserved for legal documents. When his eyes finally lifted to meet mine, I felt the impact like a physical blow. They were intelligent, assessing, and completely devoid of warmth. "Coffee? Black?" His voice was deep, smooth like aged whiskey, with an accent I couldn't quite place. "And the burger, medium rare." I scribbled on my notepad, hyper-aware of my bitten nails, the ink stain on my index finger, the way my hand shook slightly. "Anything else?" "That will suffice." He dismissed me with those 3 words, returning his attention to his phone, one of 3 devices on the table I noticed. All expensive, all buzzing periodically with messages. The security guard near him, a mountain of a man with a shaved head and cold eyes, ordered the same thing without speaking, just holding up 2 fingers. I fled to the kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Rosie caught my arm as I put in their order. "You know who that is?" she whispered, her weathered face pale. I shook my head. "That's Damien Cross." She said the name like it was cursed. "You don't want to know what he does, girl. Just serve him, keep your head down, and pray he leaves quickly." But I heard the whispers from the line cooks, caught fragments of conversation from the other waitresses. Words like organization, East Side territory, never convicted. The picture they painted made my blood run cold. Mafia. The man in the corner booth wasn't just dangerous. He was legendary. Untouchable. The kind of person who made people disappear. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped his coffee cup twice while preparing it. I took 3 deep breaths, steadied myself, and carried the tray back to table 12. I set down his coffee carefully, trying not to spill it. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't look up from his phone where he was typing rapidly with one hand, while holding another device to his ear, speaking in rapid Italian. The language sounded like music and murder combined. The next 40 minutes passed in a blur of anxiety. I refilled his coffee 3 times, brought the food, cleared plates. Each interaction was the same. He barely acknowledged my existence, treating me with the same casual indifference as the furniture. I should have been relieved. Invisible was safe, but something kept pulling my attention back to that corner booth, the way he commanded the space without speaking. How his security detail received instructions through subtle hand gestures I barely caught. The expensive watches, the briefcase that never left his bodyguard's sight, the way other diners instinctively kept their distance. Finally, he signaled for the check. I brought it over with trembling hands, setting it down on the table. "Thank you," I mumbled, already turning to leave. He pulled out a money clip, solid gold I realized with initials engraved in script, and extracted several bills without counting them. As I reached for the payment, our fingers brushed. The contact lasted less than a second, but I felt it like an electric shock. His skin was warm, surprisingly so for someone who seemed carved from ice. His eyes flicked up to mine, and for the first time, he actually saw me, really looked at me. Something flickered across his face. Curiosity? Interest? It was gone before I could identify it. "Keep the change," he said, his voice dropping lower, almost intimate despite its coldness. I glanced down at the bills. $300 for a $40 meal. "Sir, this is too much. I don't repeat myself." The words were soft but carried the weight of absolute authority. He stood, and I instinctively stepped back. He was even taller than I'd thought, and up close I could see the expensive watch on his wrist, the platinum ring on his right hand, the way his suit jacket fell open just enough to reveal a shoulder holster. The security detail moved immediately, one opening the door, the other scanning the parking lot through the window, coordinated, professional, terrifying. Damian Cross walked past me, and I caught another breath of that dangerous cologne, mixed with something else, gunpowder. My imagination running wild, they were almost to the door when I noticed it. The 3rd security guard, the one I hadn't paid much attention to, was heading toward a black Mercedes in the parking lot, keys in hand, but something was wrong. The car sat lower on one side, and there was a strange shimmer in the air around it, visible even through the diner's grimy windows. Gasoline. A pool of it, spreading under the vehicle, reflecting the parking lot lights like an oil slick. My heart stopped, then started again, hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the guard's hand moving toward the car door. Saw Damian Cross already outside, his phone to his ear. Saw the other guard reaching for the driver's side door of a second vehicle, an Escalade, black and gleaming. My body moved before my brain could catch up. "Wait!" I screamed, my voice cracking with terror. "Don't start your cars!" I burst through the diner door, my worn sneakers slapping against the pavement. Every eye in the parking lot turned toward me, the crazy waitress in her stained uniform, running like her life depended on it. "Don't start the engines," I was sobbing now, terror and adrenaline coursing through my veins. "There's gasoline everywhere. Under the Mercedes, look." The security detail reacted instantly. Guns appearing from holsters, bodies positioning themselves between their boss and me, the perceived threat. I skidded to a stop, raising my hands, tears streaming down my face. Please look," I pointed with a shaking hand. "Under the car. Someone tampered with it." Damian Cross stood perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Then, with a subtle gesture, he signaled his men to lower their weapons. He walked toward the Mercedes himself, each step measured and controlled. He crouched down, an oddly graceful movement for a man of his size, and looked under the vehicle. When he stood, His face had transformed from cold indifference to something far more terrifying, barely controlled rage. "Check everything," he ordered, his voice deadly quiet. "Now." What happened next unfolded like a nightmare in slow motion. The security team swarmed both vehicles, examining them with practiced efficiency. One of them pulled out a small device, some kind of scanner, and ran it along the Mercedes's undercarriage. "Boss," the guard with the shaved head called out, his voice tight. "We've got an IED under the engine block. Professional job. Would have taken out everyone in a 50-foot radius." The words hung in the air like poison. Someone had tried to kill Damien Cross, and if I hadn't noticed the gasoline, if I hadn't screamed, if those cars had started, my legs gave out. I sat down hard on the pavement, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. Shock, I realized distantly. I was going into shock. Suddenly he was there, crouching in front of me. Up close, his eyes weren't cold anymore. They were calculating, intense, fixed on my face with an attention that made me feel stripped bare. "What's your name?" His voice was different now, still commanding but somehow softer. Riley," I stammered. "Riley Chen." "Riley Chen," he repeated, like he was memorizing it, cataloging it in whatever database existed in that brilliant, dangerous mind. "You just saved my life." I couldn't respond, couldn't speak. The weight of what had almost happened crashed over me like a tidal wave. All those people in the diner, the families, Rosie, me. We would have all been caught in the explosion. "Look at me," he commanded gently, one hand coming up to tilt my chin. His touch was surprisingly tender, at odds with everything I knew about who he was. "Breathe. You're safe now." But I wasn't safe. Nothing about this was safe. I could see it in the way his security team was now cordoning off the area, speaking rapidly into phones. In the way sirens were already approaching. They'd called the police, bomb squad. In the way Damien Cross was looking at me like I'd become the most interesting problem he'd encountered in years. "I need to go," I whispered, trying to stand. "My daughter. I have to pick up my daughter from the hospital." His hand on my arm stopped me, not forceful, but immovable. "You're not going anywhere until I know you're safe," he said, and there was something in his voice that brooked no argument. "Someone just tried to kill me, Riley Chen. And you stopped them. Which means..." He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. Whoever had planted that bomb might have been watching. Might have seen me scream, seen me save their target, which meant I'd just painted a target on my own back. The bomb squad arrived within minutes, their van screeching into the parking lot with lights blazing red and blue against the darkening sky. I sat in the back of Damien Cross's remaining vehicle, a armored Escalade that smelled of leather and that same dangerous cologne, wrapped in a jacket one of his guards had draped over my shoulders. My uniform was still damp with spilled coffee from when my legs had given out, and I couldn't stop shaking. Through the tinted windows, I watched the organized chaos unfold. Men in protective gear swarmed the Mercedes, their movements precise and cautious. Police had cordoned off the entire parking lot, pushing back the crowd of onlookers that had gathered. Rosie stood by the diner's entrance, her face white as snow, arms crossed over her chest. Damien Cross stood outside, speaking with a detective, a tired-looking man in a rumpled suit who kept glancing nervously at the Mafia boss like he couldn't decide whether to arrest him or run. The conversation was too far away to hear, but I could read the body language. The detective was deferential, almost submissive. Cross commanded authority even from the police. "Miss Chen?" I jumped, turning to find the bald security guard, the one who'd checked the car, standing by the open door. Up close, he was even more intimidating, with a scar running through his left eyebrow and eyes that had seen too much violence. "Boss wants to know your address. We'll need to check your apartment. Make sure it's secure." "What? No, I can't. My daughter..." The words tumbled out in a panic. "I need to get to Children's Memorial. Emma's been there all day for her treatment, and visiting hours end at 9, and I promised I'd be there. We'll take you." His tone left no room for argument. "But Mr. Cross needs to ensure your safety first. You witnessed a failed assassination attempt. Protocol requires... protocol." I laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. I'm a waitress. I don't have protocols. I have a sick daughter and rent due in 5 days and tips that won't cover either. Something flickered across the guard's stone face. Sympathy, maybe, or pity. Nevertheless, Mr. Cross insists. The door on the opposite side opened, and Damien Cross slid into the seat beside me. The interior of the vehicle suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. He'd removed his suit jacket, and I could see the shoulder holster more clearly now. The weapon nestled against his ribs like a natural extension of his body. His white shirt was pristine despite everything, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that spoke of a violent past. The bomb was C4, professionally placed, he said without preamble, his eyes fixed on mine with that unsettling intensity. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Military grade, which means they also likely had surveillance on the location. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They saw me. The people who did this, they saw me stop you. Yes. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to comfort me with lies. I appreciated that, even as terror flooded my system, which is why you and your daughter are now under my protection. I don't need... This isn't a negotiation, Riley. My name on his lips sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. You saved my life tonight. That creates a debt I don't take lightly. It also makes you a target for my enemies. I don't leave loose ends, and I don't abandon people who've helped me. I'm not your responsibility. His jaw tightened, the muscle jumping beneath his skin. You became my responsibility the moment you screamed in that parking lot. Now, I can have Marco here follow you around while you pretend everything is normal, or you can accept help. Your choice. I stared at him. This man who ruled the city's underworld with an iron fist, who made people disappear, who was looking at me like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Why do you even care? Something dark and unreadable crossed his face. Because in my world, Miss Chen, loyalty is currency, and you showed loyalty to a complete stranger when it would have been safer to stay silent. That's rare. Valuable. He paused, his eyes never leaving mine. And because my nephew was in the vehicle behind the Mercedes. He's 16 years old. You saved his life, too. The weight of that settled over me. A child. I'd saved a child's life. I need to see Emma, I whispered, my voice breaking. Please. She's only 7, and she's been asking for me all day, and the nurses said she had a bad reaction to the chemo this morning. Then we go to the hospital. He pulled out one of his phones, typing rapidly. Marco will drive us. Alessandro will follow in the second vehicle after the bomb squad clears it. He glanced at me, and for a moment something almost human flickered in those cold eyes. What does your daughter have? Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The words tasted like ash. Stage 3. We're trying a new treatment protocol, but the insurance won't cover it, and the hospital's charity program is backed up for months, and I'm working doubles every day, but it's never enough. I cut myself off, horrified that I was spilling my entire pathetic life story to a crime lord. But something about the way he listened, completely focused, absorbing every word, made it impossible to stop. Which hospital? Children's Memorial, 4th floor oncology ward. He made a call, speaking in rapid Italian again. I caught words here and there. Hospital. Security. Immediately, but couldn't follow the full conversation. When he hung up, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. You work 2 jobs? 3, actually. The diner, weekend shifts at a grocery store, and I clean offices at night when I can get Emma's neighbor to babysit. I laughed bitterly. Not that it matters. Medical bills are like quicksand. The more you fight, the deeper you sink. The Escalade pulled away from the diner, Marco at the wheel, navigating through traffic with the kind of aggressive efficiency that came from driving for someone important. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, creating patterns of gold and shadow across Damien's face. Tell me about the bomb, I said suddenly. Why didn't your people notice it before? He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw tight. Because we swept the vehicles this morning. Whoever did this gained access between then and dinner service, which means either they had inside information about my schedule, or they've been surveilling my movements. His hands curled into fists. Someone on my payroll is a traitor." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. "What will you do to them when you find them?" His eyes met mine, and in them, I saw something ancient and merciless. What I do to anyone who betrays me. I should have been terrified, should have demanded he let me out of the car, should have run as far and fast as my broken shoes could carry me. Instead, I found myself asking, "How did you know? That you could trust me?" I didn't. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the first hint of any expression beyond cold calculation. "But you were crying. Real tears, real terror. You weren't acting. You genuinely thought we were all about to die." He tilted his head, studying me. "And you ran toward danger, not away from it. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." The hospital loomed ahead, its white walls glowing in the darkness like a beacon, or a prison. I'd spent so many hours within those walls, watching my daughter fight for her life, that the building had become synonymous with fear and hope in equal measure. Marco pulled into the emergency bay, somewhere we definitely weren't supposed to park. But before I could protest, Damien was already out of the vehicle, coming around to open my door. His hand extended toward me, an oddly formal gesture. I took it, his grip warm and steady, and let him help me out. I was immediately aware of how I must look. Stained uniform, tear-streaked face, cheap shoes falling apart. Next to his tailored perfection, I was a mess. "Fourth floor?" he asked. "You don't have to come up. I'm not letting you out of my sight until I know the perimeter is secure." It wasn't a request. We entered through the main doors, and I felt every eye in the lobby turn toward us. Damien Cross commanded attention like gravity, unavoidable and absolute. The security guard at the desk stood immediately, his hand moving toward his radio before he seemed to think better of it. The elevator ride to the 4th floor was silent, tension thick enough to cut. I could feel him beside me, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. When the doors opened, I practically ran down the familiar hallway, my heart in my throat. Emma's room was at the end of the corridor, the door slightly ajar. I pushed it open and felt my heart break and heal simultaneously at the sight of my daughter. She looked so small in the hospital bed. Her dark hair, what was left of it after chemo, spread across the pillow like silk. An IV ran from her thin arm to a bag of fluids hanging beside the bed, but her eyes, her beautiful dark eyes, so much like her father's, lit up when she saw me. "Mama!" Her voice was weak, but filled with joy. I rushed to her bedside, gathering her carefully into my arms, mindful of the tubes and wires. "Baby girl, I'm so sorry I'm late. There was an incident at work. Did you bring me a cookie?" She pulled back to look at my face, her expression hopeful. "Not tonight, sweetheart, but maybe tomorrow." "Is that your boyfriend?" I froze, following her gaze to the doorway where Damien Cross stood, looking completely out of place in the sterile hospital room with its cheerful pediatric decorations. He filled the doorframe, his presence somehow both threatening and protective at once. "No, baby, he's a customer from the diner." Emma studied him with the brutal honesty only children possess. "You're really tall, and you look scary, but you have nice eyes." To my absolute shock, Damien's expression softened. Not much, but enough that I noticed. He stepped into the room, moving with careful deliberation, as if aware that his natural predatory grace might frighten a sick child. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice gentler than I'd heard it. "Emma Lily Chen. I'm 7 3/4. Do you have kids?" "No." "Oh." She tilted her head, considering. "You should. I think you'd be a good dad. You have strong hands, like you could catch someone if they fell." Something passed across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by that calculating mask. A nurse bustled in, her eyes widening when she saw Damien. "Miss Chen, visiting hours are... Oh." She stopped, looking between us with obvious confusion. "I'll only be a few minutes," I promised, turning back to Emma. "How was today? Did the new medicine make you feel sick?" Emma made a face. "A little bit. But Nurse Sarah gave me the good crackers, and I got to watch 2 whole movies. She yawned, her small body trembling with exhaustion. Will you stay tonight, Mama? Please? My heart shattered. Baby, I have to work the night shift, remember? We need the money for your medicine. Actually, Damien's voice cut through the room, authoritative and final. You won't be working tonight, or any night this week. You've been given time off. Paid. I spun to face him. What? You can't just... I already called your manager. It's handled. His eyes locked with mine, and in them, I saw something that made my breath catch, not just authority, but something deeper. Possessive. Your daughter needs you. You should be here. I can't accept. You can, and you will. He moved closer, and I was hyper-aware of Emma watching this exchange with bright, interested eyes. Considerate payment for services rendered. You saved my life, Riley Chen. Let me make sure you can spend tonight with your daughter. I wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some shred of independence. But Emma's small hand in mine, her hopeful expression, the bone-deep exhaustion in my body, it all conspired against my pride. Okay, I whispered. Thank you. He nodded once, then pulled out his phone. After a brief conversation in Italian, he looked at the nurse. A security detail will be posted outside this room tonight. They're not to be disturbed or questioned. Understood? The nurse nodded mutely, and I realized with creeping horror that Damien Cross's reputation extended even here, into the sterile safety of a children's hospital. Sleep, he told me, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. Marco will be outside if you need anything. Tomorrow we'll discuss your situation more thoroughly. My situation. His eyes met mine, and I saw the promise in them of protection, yes, but also of something more dangerous. Something that felt like chains wrapping around my life, beautiful and terrifying all at once. Someone tried to kill me tonight, Riley, and you stopped them. That makes you mine to protect. He paused at the door, looking back. Whether you like it or not, then he was gone, leaving me trembling in the wake of his presence. Emma already drifting off to sleep beside me, and my entire world tilted on its axis. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, with armed guards stationed outside my daughter's hospital room, and the weight of what had happened pressing down on my chest like a physical thing? Emma slept peacefully beside me, her small hand curled in mine, her breathing steady despite the poison they pumped into her veins to kill the cancer eating her from the inside. The vinyl hospital chair was hell on my back, but I'd slept in worse places, at least here. I could watch Emma's chest rise and fall, could reassure myself that she was still alive, still fighting. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Heartbeat, oxygen levels, IV drip. A symphony of survival I'd learned to read like sheet music. Around 3 a.m, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Your rent is paid through the end of the year. The building manager has been contacted. DC. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. Then another came through. Emma's treatment costs have been handled. The hospital's billing department will contact you tomorrow with details. Sleep. I should have been grateful. Should have been relieved that the crushing weight of debt had been lifted, at least temporarily. Instead, I felt the chains tightening. Invisible, but undeniable. Damien Cross was weaving a web around me, and with each act of generosity, I became more entangled. But Emma needed treatment. My rent was 3 months overdue. And I was so tired of drowning. I typed back with trembling fingers. I can't accept this. The response came immediately, as if he'd been waiting. You already have. Rest, Riley. We'll talk tomorrow. Morning came too quickly, pale sunlight filtering through the hospital blinds. Emma woke slowly, her eyes fluttering open like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. Mama, she whispered, her voice hoarse. You stayed. I stayed, baby. I brushed her remaining hair back from her forehead, feeling the fever that always came after chemo. How do you feel? Tired, but happy. She smiled, and it broke my heart how much joy such a simple thing brought her. Her mother spending one night by her bedside instead of working herself into an early grave. A knock on the door interrupted us. I tensed. but it was just Nurse Sarah with breakfast and medications. She gave me a strange look, somewhere between sympathy and concern. "There are men outside," she said quietly, as she checked Emma's vitals. "Very serious men. Miss Chen, is everything all right?" "It's complicated. Hospital security wants to know if they should call the police." "No." The word came out too sharp, too frightened. I lowered my voice. "No, they're protection. There was an incident yesterday. It's being handled." Sarah's eyes widened with understanding, or maybe just more questions, but she was professional enough not to press. After she left, I helped Emma with her breakfast, watching her pick at the oatmeal and fruit with little appetite. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from an unknown number. I stepped into the hallway to answer, acutely aware of Marco standing a few feet away, his presence both comforting and terrifying. Riley Chen. The voice on the other end was female, crisp and professional. "My name is Victoria Rossi. I'm Mr. Cross's personal attorney. He's asked me to arrange a meeting with you this afternoon at 2:00. A car will pick you up from the hospital. I can't leave Emma. Arrangements have been made for a private nurse to stay with your daughter during the meeting. Mr. Cross was quite specific about your concerns." Of course he was. The man seemed to anticipate everything. "What's the meeting about?" "That's between you and Mr. Cross." Her tone suggested the conversation was over. "The car will arrive at 1:45. Please be ready." She hung up before I could protest further. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of anxiety. Emma's doctor came by, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Martinez, who'd been overseeing Emma's case since diagnosis. She seemed confused but pleased when she pulled me aside. "Miss Chen, I don't know how this happened, but Emma's treatment costs have been covered by an anonymous donor. The entire protocol, including the experimental medication we discussed." She looked at me with wonder and suspicion in equal measure. "This is over $200,000. Do you know who—" "A generous customer," I interrupted, the lie tasting bitter. "Someone who heard about Emma's situation." Dr. Martinez didn't look convinced, but she was too professional, and perhaps too grateful for the funding, to push further. "Well, this means we can start the advanced treatment immediately. Emma's response to the standard chemo has been good, but this new protocol, it could save her life." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Damien Cross was buying my daughter's life, and with it, my loyalty. At exactly 1:45, a nurse I didn't recognize arrived, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and credentials that checked out. She introduced herself as Patricia and immediately set about making Emma comfortable, pulling out a tablet loaded with movies and games. Emma barely noticed when I kissed her goodbye. Too engrossed in the entertainment, I tried not to feel hurt by how easily she dismissed me. Marco escorted me downstairs to where a different vehicle waited, a black sedan, more understated than the Escalade, but no less expensive. The interior smelled like leather and money. The driver said nothing, just pulled smoothly into traffic. We drove through the city, past neighborhoods that grew progressively wealthier, until we entered an area I'd only seen in magazines: gated estates, manicured lawns, houses that were really mansions pretending to be modest. The car turned into a long driveway flanked by iron gates that opened automatically. The house at the end of the drive was stunning, modern architecture mixing with classical elements, all glass and stone and carefully designed landscaping. Security cameras were everywhere, I noticed, and men in suits patrolled the grounds with the precision of military personnel. My heart hammered as the car stopped at the front entrance. Marco opened my door. When had he gotten into the front seat? And offered his hand to help me out. "Mr. Cross is waiting in his office," he said, his tone almost gentle. "Third floor, last door on the left." The interior of the house was even more impressive. All clean lines and expensive art. The kind of place where my secondhand clothes and worn shoes felt like an insult. A woman who I assumed was Victoria Rossi met me in the foyer, her sharp suit and sharper eyes assessing me in seconds. "Miss Chen, this way, please." I followed her up a curved staircase, my reflection mocking me from the polished marble. We passed rooms filled with books, artwork, furniture that probably cost more than my annual income. Everything spoke of wealth, power, and control. The office door was solid wood, heavy and imposing. Victoria knocked once, then opened it without waiting for an answer. Damien Cross stood by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate grounds, his back to us, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking Italian again, his tone cold and commanding. When he turned and saw me, he ended the call abruptly. "Leave us," he told Victoria. She nodded and departed, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. We were alone. The office was masculine and intimidating. Dark wood furniture, leather chairs, walls lined with books in multiple languages. A massive desk dominated the space, covered with papers, laptops, and what looked like architectural blueprints. But what caught my attention were the monitors on one wall, displaying security feeds from various locations. "Sit," Damien said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I remained standing. Why am I here? His eyebrow raised slightly. Amusement? Annoyance? "Because we need to discuss your future." "My future is my own, not anymore." He moved toward me, each step measured and deliberate. "Last night you became connected to me. My enemies saw you. They know you saved my life, which means they'll come after you to get to me. Then I'll go somewhere else, change my name, take Emma and disappear. You can't." He was close now, too close, his presence overwhelming. "They're already looking for you. I have my best people searching for whoever planted that bomb, but until I find them, you're in danger. Emma's in danger. The mention of my daughter made my blood run cold. You're using her to manipulate me." "I'm using facts to make you understand reality." His eyes bore into mine. "I can protect you both, but only if you accept my help. And what do you want in return?" The question came out bitter, accusatory. "Men like you don't do anything for free." Something dark flickered across his face. "Men like me?" He stepped even closer, and I could smell his cologne again, that dangerous scent that made my head spin. "You don't know anything about me, Riley Chen. I know enough. I know what people say about you. The businesses you control, the people who've disappeared, I've never harmed anyone who didn't deserve it." His voice dropped to something almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. "I've never hurt a woman, never harmed a child, and I've certainly never forced anyone into my service." He paused. "But I also don't let good deeds go unrewarded, and I don't abandon people under my protection. I didn't ask for your protection. You earned it." His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek so softly I almost thought I'd imagined it. "When you screamed in that parking lot, when you risked your life to save mine, you became mine to protect. It's not negotiable." The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else entirely, something warm and dangerous coiling in my stomach. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. His eyes searched my face, lingering on my lips before meeting my gaze again. "I want you to work for me." "Work for you? Doing what?" "I need someone I can trust, someone who's proven their loyalty isn't bought. Because you already had the chance to stay silent and didn't take it." He moved away, giving me space to breathe, and settled against his desk. "I have several legitimate businesses. Restaurants, real estate, import, export. They need management, oversight. You'd start as my personal assistant, handling the day-to-day operations I don't have time for. I'm a waitress. I'm not qualified. You're intelligent, observant, and you work harder than anyone I've ever met." His tone suggested he didn't make such statements lightly. "I've had people looking into your background. 3 jobs, raising a sick child alone, never missed a payment until the medical bills became impossible. You're exactly what I need." The revelation that he'd investigated me should have angered me. Instead, I felt exposed, vulnerable. "And if I say no, then I'll still protect you and Emma, but you'll do it from a distance, with guards following your every move, never knowing if the next person you serve might be the one sent to kill you." He let that sink in. "Or you can work for me, live in a secure location, have Emma treated by the best doctors money can buy, and actually have a chance at a normal life." "Nothing about this is normal, no," he agreed. "But it's better than what you have now." He was right, and I hated him for it. Hated that he could waltz into my desperate life and offer solutions I couldn't refuse. Hated that part of me, a shameful, traitorous part, was drawn to him despite everything he represented. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. He pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. Tonight, you'll stay here. Emma will be transferred to a private room with round-the-clock medical care. You can see her anytime you want. You can't just... I can, and I have. He looked up from his phone, his eyes intense. The people who tried to kill me are still out there, Riley, and they're looking for you. Every second you spend in that hospital, in your apartment, at that diner, you're exposed, vulnerable. His jaw tightened. I won't let you die because of me. The certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction, made something inside me crack. When was the last time anyone had cared about my survival? When had anyone fought to keep me safe? Why do you care? The question came out broken, desperate. You don't even know me. Damien was quiet for a long moment, something warring behind his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, almost vulnerable. My sister, he said softly. She had a daughter, my niece, Sophia. She was 6 when she died. Leukemia, same as Emma. The pain in his voice was raw, real. My sister worked 3 jobs trying to afford treatment. I was in prison, couldn't help her. By the time I got out and could pay for the best care. He trailed off, his hands curling into fists. I was too late. Understanding crashed over me like a wave. That's why you're helping Emma. That's why I won't let another child die because their mother couldn't afford treatment. His eyes met mine, and in them, I saw genuine emotion for the first time. And it's why I won't let you work yourself to death trying to save her. I couldn't save Sophia, but I can save Emma. Let me do that, Riley. Please. The word please from this powerful, dangerous man's lips undid me completely. Okay, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Okay. The room Damien's staff prepared for me was larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate gardens, now illuminated by soft landscape lighting as evening fell. The bed was enormous, covered in linens that probably cost more than my monthly rent. A private bathroom featured a soaking tub and a shower with multiple heads. Fresh clothes had been laid out, expensive but understated pieces in my exact size. Of course he'd known my size. He seemed to know everything. I stood at the window, watching the security patrol make their rounds, and tried to reconcile my new reality. 24 hours ago, I'd been a struggling waitress drowning in debt. Now I was living in a mansion, my daughter's medical bills paid, offered a job by a man who terrified and fascinated me in equal measure. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Come in. Victoria Rossi entered, carrying a tablet, and wearing an expression that suggested she didn't entirely approve of my presence. Mr. Cross asked me to go over your employment contract and other arrangements. Employment contract, I repeated, the words feeling surreal. She settled into one of the room's armchairs, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. Your salary will be $150,000 annually, with full benefits including health insurance, comprehensive coverage for both you and Emma. Housing is provided on the estate in the West Wing guest suite. A car and driver will be at your disposal. The numbers made my head spin. That's too much. Mr. Cross doesn't negotiate his offerings. Victoria's tone was crisp, professional. Your duties will include managing his legitimate business operations, coordinating with property managers, overseeing import documentation, and serving as his representative at various meetings. She paused. You'll also need to sign an extensive non-disclosure agreement. Everything you see, hear, or learn, while in Mr. Cross's employment, remains confidential. Violation of this agreement has severe consequences. The threat was barely veiled. I nodded, my throat dry. Emma will be transferred to the estate tomorrow morning. We have a fully equipped medical suite staffed by Dr. Chen, no relation, who specializes in pediatric oncology. She's one of the best in the country. Victoria's expression softened slightly. Mr. Cross has spared no expense for your daughter's care. Why? The question burst out before I could stop it. Why is he doing all this? Victoria studied me for a long moment, something like understanding in her sharp eyes. Because Damien Cross pays his debts. And because... She hesitated, choosing her words carefully, because he sees something in you that he respects. Loyalty. Courage. In his world, those qualities are rare and valuable. She left shortly after, leaving me with a stack of documents to review and sign. I tried to read through them, but the legal language was dense, and exhaustion was making my eyes blur. I just set them aside when another knock came. This time it was Marco, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Cross requests your presence for dinner." Requests or demands? The ghost of a smile touched his scarred face. With Mr. Cross, there's often little difference. I followed him through the mansion's corridors, noting the security cameras, the reinforced doors, the way every window had bulletproof glass. This wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. The dining room was surprisingly intimate compared to the rest of the house. A table that could seat 20 held settings for two, positioned at one end to create a more personal atmosphere. Candles flickered in silver holders, and the smell of garlic and herbs made my stomach growl. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. Damien stood when I entered, a gesture of old-world courtesy that seemed at odds with everything I knew about him. He'd changed from his suit into dark slacks and a black button-down, the sleeves rolled up to reveal those scarred forearms. Without the armor of his full business attire, he seemed somehow more dangerous, more real. "You don't have to do this," I said as he pulled out my chair. "The formal dinner, the politeness. I know what you are. And what am I?" He settled into his own seat, his eyes never leaving my face. Dangerous, powerful, someone who kills people who cross him. True on all counts. He poured wine into my glass, something red and expensive looking. But I'm also someone who believes in civility, especially with people under my protection. His lips quirked. And I'm someone who hasn't shared a meal with interesting company in quite some time. I'm not interesting. I'm a broke single mother with a dying daughter. You're a woman who works 3 jobs, raises a child alone, and still had the courage to run toward a potential bomb to save strangers. His intensity was almost physical. That's more interesting than 90% of the people I encounter. Dinner arrived. Some kind of pasta with seafood that looked like art on the plate. I ate mechanically, too aware of him watching me, studying me like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. "Tell me about Emma's father," he said suddenly. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "That's none of your business. Everything about you is my business now." His tone brooked no argument. "I need to know if he's a potential complication. If he'll try to claim Emma, interfere with her treatment, cause problems. He's dead." The words came out flat, emotionless. Dead or gone, I don't know which. He left when I was 6 months pregnant, and I haven't seen him since. His name? Does it matter? It might. Damien leaned back in his chair, wineglass in hand. "My enemies are thorough, Riley. They'll dig into your past, look for leverage. I need to know what they'll find." I set down my fork, appetite gone. "Marcus Chen. We met in college, got pregnant accidentally. He said he'd stay, that we'd make it work. Then he just vanished. No note, no explanation. I tracked down his family. They said he'd mentioned debts, people looking for him. That's all I know." Something shifted in Damien's expression. "Marcus Chen. Describe him. Why does it describe him?" The command in his voice made me obey automatically. Tall, dark hair, charming. He always had money but wouldn't say where it came from. Had a tattoo on his left shoulder blade. Some kind of symbol I never understood. I paused. The memory's bitter. He was good at lying. I didn't realize how good until he was gone. Damien pulled out his phone, scrolling through something before turning the screen toward me. "Is this him?" The photograph made my blood run cold. Marcus, but older, harder. He was standing next to other men, all of them armed, in what looked like a warehouse. The image quality suggested surveillance footage. "Yes," I whispered. "That's him. Where, when?" Marcus Chen worked for the Vittorio family, one of my rival organizations. Damien's voice was cold, clinical. He was mid-level enforcement, responsible for collections and occasionally messier work. He paused, letting that sink in. 3 months ago, he was caught stealing from a shipment. $250,000 in cash. Vittorio doesn't tolerate theft. He's dead? Very. Damien's eyes never left my face. They made an example of him, sent a message to anyone else considering betrayal. I should have felt something. Grief, shock, horror. Instead, I felt nothing. Marcus had abandoned me and Emma. Whatever fate he'd met was his own doing. Does Emma know? She thinks he left, which is true enough. I met Damien's gaze. Why are you telling me this? Because Marcus's debt to Vittorio died with him. But Vittorio is the kind of man who believes in inherited obligations. His jaw tightened. If he discovers Marcus had a daughter, he might try to use her to send another message. About loyalty. About what happens to the families of thieves. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Emma's in danger because of her father. Emma's in danger because she exists in proximity to my world now. Marcus's connection only adds another layer. He leaned forward, his intensity almost overwhelming. But I won't let anything happen to her. Or to you. You have my word. The word of a crime lord? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. The word of a man who doesn't give it lightly. His hand covered mine on the table, warm and solid. I've done terrible things, Riley. I won't pretend otherwise, but I've never broken a promise, and I've never harmed someone under my protection. You and Emma are safe here. I'll make sure of it. I wanted to pull my hand away, to reject the comfort he was offering. But I was so tired. Tired of fighting alone, tired of being afraid, tired of watching my daughter suffer while I worked myself to death trying to save her. Why me? The question came out broken. You could have anyone. Why complicate your life with a waitress and her sick kid? Damien was quiet for a long moment, his thumb brushing across my knuckles in a gesture that felt far too intimate. Because when that bomb was seconds from detonating, you didn't think about yourself. You thought about everyone who would die, including me, a complete stranger. His eyes held mine, because you remind me that goodness still exists in this world. And because... He trailed off, but something in his expression made my breath catch. Because? I prompted, my voice barely above a whisper, because I've spent 15 years in a world where everyone wants something from me. Money, power, protection, fear. You're the first person in longer than I can remember who looked at me and saw a human being worth saving. His grip on my hand tightened slightly. That's rare, Riley. Precious. And I protect what's precious to me. The weight of his words settled over me like a blanket, warm and suffocating all at once. This wasn't just protection he was offering. It was something more dangerous, more consuming. I don't know how to live in your world, I admitted. Then I'll teach you. He stood, still holding my hand, drawing me to my feet. But first you need rest. Tomorrow will be demanding. Emma's transfer, your orientation, meeting the rest of my staff. He walked me back to my room, his hand on the small of my back, a gesture both protective and possessive. At my door, he paused. The lock is only for your peace of mind. You're not a prisoner here, Riley. You can leave anytime you want. His eyes held mine. But I hope you'll stay. Do I really have a choice? There's always a choice. His hand came up, cupping my cheek with surprising gentleness. I'm just hoping you'll choose to trust me. He left before I could respond, his footsteps fading down the corridor. I stood in the doorway, my cheek still warm from his touch. My heart racing with a mixture of fear and something dangerously close to excitement. I was in over my head, drowning in a world I didn't understand, protected by a man who terrified me. But for the first time in years, I wasn't facing the darkness alone. And God help me, that was almost worth the price. I spent the rest of the evening reviewing the contract documents, finally signing them around midnight. The pen felt heavy in my hand, like I was signing away more than just my employment, like I was binding myself to Damien Cross in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of explosions and dark eyes, and promises I wasn't sure could be kept. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and my phone buzzing with a message. Emma arrives at 10 a.m. Thought you'd want to be there. DC. I showered quickly, marveling at the water pressure and the expensive products in the bathroom. The clothes laid out fit perfectly, dark slacks and a cream blouse that looked professional, but felt like silk against my skin. Someone had even provided new shoes, comfortable flats in my exact size. Marco appeared at 9:30 to escort me to the medical suite. It was in the East Wing, a fully equipped facility that would have impressed any hospital. Examination rooms, a small surgical suite, recovery rooms with the latest monitoring equipment. And in the center of it all, a bright, cheerful space that had been designed specifically for a child. Emma's new room had windows overlooking a garden, walls painted with murals of forests and fairy tales, and a bed that looked more like something from a 5-star hotel than a medical facility. Monitors were discreetly hidden behind decorative panels, and the IV pole had been disguised as a tree branch. Dr. Chen, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an impressive resume framed on the wall, was checking equipment when I arrived. "Miss Riley, I'm Dr. Linda Chen. Mr. Cross has briefed me extensively on Emma's case. I've reviewed all her records, and I'm confident we can provide excellent care." "This is incredible," I breathed, taking in the space. "She'll love it." That was the intention. Damien's voice came from behind me, and I turned to find him standing in the doorway. He was back in a suit, navy today, with a burgundy tie, looking every inch the powerful man he was. Children shouldn't have to feel like they're in a hospital, even when they are. Before I could respond, voices echoed from the hallway. Emma's delighted squeal among them. She appeared moments later in a wheelchair pushed by Patricia, her eyes wide with wonder. "Mama, this place is like a castle. Are we really going to stay here?" Her gaze found Damien, and her face lit up. "Mr. Scary Man, you have a castle." Despite everything, I had to laugh. Damien's expression softened. That same subtle shift I'd noticed yesterday when Emma called him scary but nice. "It's not quite a castle," he said, crouching down to her level. "But it's safe. And it has everything you need to get better." Emma studied him seriously. "Will you catch me if I fall, like I said yesterday?" Something passed across his face. That same pain I'd seen when he spoke of his niece. Always. 3 months passed in a blur of treatments, security briefings, and learning to navigate Damien's world. Emma thrived under Dr. Chen's care. The experimental protocol was working, her cancer markers dropping with each test. She gained weight, her hair started growing back in soft, dark waves, and her laughter filled the medical suite like music I'd forgotten existed. I learned my job quickly, discovering I had a talent for organization and negotiation that surprised even me. Managing Damien's legitimate businesses meant dealing with property managers, import licenses, and restaurant operations. Work that kept me busy but felt purposeful. Real. Legal even. But it was the evenings that changed everything. Damien made a habit of having dinner with us, Emma, him, and me, in the small dining room off the medical suite. He'd arrive still in his suit, often with blood on his knuckles that he'd wash away before Emma could see, and transform into something almost gentle. He taught Emma chess, read her stories in Italian that made her giggle at his dramatic voices, and listened with genuine interest to her rambling tales about the animated movies she watched. And he looked at me with increasing intensity that made my skin burn and my heart race. I tried to ignore it, tried to pretend I didn't notice how his hand would linger on my back when he guided me through doorways, how his eyes followed me across rooms, how the air between us seemed to crackle with unspoken tension, but denial only worked for so long. It was a Tuesday evening when everything shifted. Emma had fallen asleep early after a particularly exhausting treatment, and I'd stayed in her room reading beside her bed. Around 9, Damien appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened and his suit jacket gone. "She's resting well?" he asked quietly. "Finally. The new medication made her nauseous today." I stood, stretching muscles cramped from sitting too long. "Dr. Chen says it's normal, that her body's adjusting. Come with me." It wasn't a request. I followed him through the mansion to his office, that same space where he'd first offered me this new life. The monitors on the wall showed various security feeds, but he ignored them, moving instead to the bar cart in the corner and pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Whiskey," he said, handing me one. "Aged 20 years. You look like you need it." I took a sip, the burn welcome. "What's this about?" "We found him. Damien's voice was cold, controlled. The man who planted the bomb. One of my own people. Marco's cousin, actually. The Vittorio family got to him, promised him $500,000 to take me out. My blood ran cold. What did you do to him? What I do to all traitors. His eyes met mine, unflinching. He's dead. So are the 3 Vittorio enforcers who recruited him. He took a long drink. There will be retaliation. There always is. Which means increased security, more restrictions on movement. I wanted you to know. Emma is safe, will remain safe. I have 15 men assigned solely to her protection. He moved closer, and I could smell his cologne mixed with whiskey. But I need you to understand something, Riley. This life, my life, it doesn't get easier. It gets more complicated, more dangerous. The people who want me dead will use anyone close to me as leverage. Are you saying we should leave? I'm saying you need to decide if this is really what you want. His hand came up, fingers tracing my jawline with aching gentleness, because I can't let you go, not anymore. You and Emma, you've become important to me, too important. And that makes you targets. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear my own voice. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between that first night in the parking lot and watching Emma beat me at chess last week, I've become obsessed with you. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I stopped breathing. I think about you constantly. When I'm in meetings, when I'm dealing with business, when I should be focused on staying alive, all I can think about is you, your smile, your laugh, the way you look at your daughter like she's your entire world. Damien, I want you, Riley, not just in my house, not just working for me. I want you in my bed, in my life, in every way that matters. His other hand came up to frame my face, his touch reverent despite the violence I knew those hands were capable of. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me you feel it too. I should have lied. Should have protected myself, maintained professional distance, but I was so tired of lying, of pretending I didn't notice him, didn't crave his presence. I feel it, I whispered. God help me, I feel it too. His kiss was inevitable, fierce and consuming, tasting of whiskey and promises. His hands tangled in my hair while mine fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing more. 3 months of tension exploded between us, and I was drowning in sensation, his taste, his scent, the solid strength of his body against mine. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead against mine. Stay with me tonight. Let me show you what this could be. Emma has 3 nurses monitoring her. Patricia will call if anything changes. His hand slid down my back, leaving fire in their wake. Please, Riley. Let me have this. Let me have you. I nodded, beyond words, and let him lead me through the mansion to his private quarters, a suite I'd never entered before. His bedroom was masculine and sophisticated, all dark wood and leather, with windows overlooking the estate grounds. What happened that night changed everything. He was gentle, but demanding, taking his time to learn every inch of my body, making me feel desired in ways I'd never experienced. Marcus had been selfish, rushed. Damien was the opposite, focused entirely on my pleasure, on making me fall apart in his hands, again and again, until I was boneless and sated and completely his. Afterward, lying in his arms with my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, I felt safer than I had in years. I love you, he said into the darkness, his voice rough. I know it's too soon. I know it's insane. But I love you. You and Emma both. You've become my family. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I love you even too. Though I shouldn't. Even though this is crazy. His arms tightened around me. Then we'll be crazy together. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Emma's cancer went into full remission, her scans clear, her strength returning. She started homeschooling with a tutor Damien hired, and began talking about what she wanted to be when she grew up, a doctor, like Dr. Chen, so she could help other sick kids. The war with the Vittorio family escalated, then ended abruptly when their leadership was arrested in a massive FBI raid. I didn't ask how Damien had orchestrated it, didn't want to know the details. Some things were better left in the shadows. Damien proposed on a quiet Sunday morning, presenting me with a ring that was both elegant and understated, so unlike the ostentatious displays I might have expected. Emma had helped him pick it out, he admitted, and her squeal of delight when I said yes was worth everything. We married in a private ceremony on the estate, just immediate family. Emma as my maid of honor, Marco as Damien's best man, and a handful of trusted friends. Dr. Chen cried happy tears. Victoria Rossi actually smiled, and Emma walked down the aisle scattering flower petals with such joy that everyone present felt the weight of the miracle. This child who'd been dying was now dancing at her mother's wedding. Damien's vows made me cry. I promise to protect you both with everything I am, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. To give you the life you deserve, the safety you need, and the love you've earned. You saved my life that night in the parking lot, Riley. And every day since, you've given me reasons to live it. Mine were simpler. I choose you. I choose this life, this love, this family, for as long as we both shall live. When he kissed me, Emma cheered louder than anyone. The reception was small but perfect. Good food, better wine, and the kind of happiness I'd thought was impossible for someone like me. I watched Damien dance with Emma, lifting her onto his feet so she could reach, her arms around his neck, her laughter pure and bright. He looked at her with such fierce love that my heart ached. Later, when Emma had fallen asleep in her room, now decorated exactly how she wanted, with bookshelves full of stories and a window seat overlooking the garden, Damien and I stood on the balcony of our bedroom, looking out at the estate grounds lit by moonlight. Do you ever regret it? I asked softly. Taking us in, changing your life for us. He pulled me against his chest, his arms wrapping around me from behind. Never. You gave me something I'd lost, hope, purpose beyond survival and revenge. He pressed a kiss to my temple. You and Emma are my redemption, Riley. My second chance at having a family. We're not going anywhere, I promised. Good, because I've gotten very attached. His tone lightened slightly. Emma's already asking when she can have a baby brother or sister. I laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet night. One miracle at a time, fair enough. He turned me in his arms, his expression serious. But I want you to know, this life I live, the things I do, they're not always clean or legal. I can't change that. But I will always keep you safe, always protect what's mine. I know. And I did. I'd entered this world with my eyes open, accepting both the man he was and the darkness he carried. I'm not afraid anymore. You should be. A little. His smile was dark, dangerous, all the things that should terrify me but only made me love him more. I'm a very possessive man, Riley Cross. Now that you're mine, I'm never letting you go. Promise? On my life. We stayed there until dawn, wrapped in each other, and the knowledge that we'd found something rare. Love born from chaos, family forged from danger, and a future that, against all odds, looked bright. 3 years later, Emma celebrated being 5 years cancer-free with a party that filled the estate with children's laughter. She was 10 now, healthy and vibrant, with dreams of medical school and a stubborn streak she'd inherited from both her mother and her stepfather. Damien had stepped back from the darker aspects of his business, delegating more and focusing on the legitimate enterprises. He'd never be entirely clean, his past wouldn't allow it, but he was trying. For us. For the family we'd built, and when I held our newborn son, named Marcus, after the man who'd given me Emma, but never lived to see what she'd become, and watched Damien cradle him with the same fierce protectiveness he showed Emma, I knew we'd found our happy ending. It wasn't perfect. Damien still had enemies, still had to maintain security, still occasionally came home with blood on his hands. But he always came home. To us. To the life we'd built from ashes and miracles. The night I'd screamed in that parking lot, terrified and desperate, I'd saved a life. What I hadn't known was that I was also saving my own, and my daughter's. Damien Cross had promised me protection, safety, a future. He'd given me all that and more. He'd given me love, family, and a life I'd never dared to dream possible. And every night, when I fell asleep in his arms with Emma and baby Marcus safe down the hall, I thanked God for the moment I'd noticed that gasoline pooling under a stranger's car, for the courage to scream a warning, for the dangerous, beautiful man who'd heard me, and for the life we'd built together, imperfect, complicated, and absolutely, perfectly ours. Some people might say I'd traded one prison for another, that Damien's protection was just a gilded cage, but they'd be wrong. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was living, and I was loved. The rest was just details.